Guys, what I'm about to tell you will absolutely blow your mind. My brother-in-law thought he could publicly humiliate me in front of our entire family at dinner last night, but what happened next? Let's just say he'll never make that mistake again. And the look on everyone's faces when I pulled out that stack of cash. Priceless. But before I get to that epic moment, you need to understand the full backstory because this has been building up for 3 years. Before we dive in, if you've ever had a family member who thinks they're better than you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Trust me, you're going to want to hear every single detail of this story because the revenge is absolutely legendary. And make sure you stick around until the end because what my sister said to Derek afterwards will shock you. So let me paint you the full picture. 3 years ago, my sister Sarah married this guy Derek. Now, Derek isn't necessarily a bad person, but he's got this massive superiority complex that drives everyone in our family absolutely insane. The guy works in tech sales for some mid-level company, makes maybe $75,000 a year, but acts like he's the next Elon Musk. From day one, Derek has made it his personal mission to establish himself as the successful one in the family. He drives this leased BMW that he's constantly talking about, wears these expensive suits that he probably put on credit cards, and name drops clients like he's closing million-dollar deals every week. The reality? He's a decent salesman who's good at his job, but nothing spectacular. Meanwhile, I've been running my own business for the past 5 years. I started a digital marketing consultancy right after college, and let me tell you, it's been a wild ride. The first 2 years were brutal. I was working 18-hour days, living off ramen noodles, and barely making rent. My family knew I was struggling back then, and Derek. He ate it up. Every family gathering, Derek would make these little comments. "How's the entrepreneur life treating you, Mike?" with this condescending smile. Still chasing that dream. When I'd mention a potential client or a project I was excited about, he'd give me this patronizing nod like he was humoring a child talking about wanting to be an astronaut. But here's what Derek didn't know, what nobody in my family knew, was that about 2 years ago, everything changed. I landed this massive contract with a Fortune 500 company to handle their entire digital marketing strategy. Then another one. Then another. Suddenly, I wasn't just scraping by anymore. I was making more money than I'd ever imagined possible. But here's the thing about me, I've never been flashy with money. I drive the same reliable Honda I bought 5 years ago. I live in the same modest apartment. I wear normal clothes from normal stores. Why? Because I grew up watching my parents stress about money, and I learned that real financial security isn't about impressing people, it's about building something sustainable. So while Derek was out there leasing luxury cars and buying designer clothes to look successful, I was quietly building actual wealth. I was investing, saving, growing my business, and living well below my means. But to everyone else, especially Derek, I still looked like that struggling entrepreneur who was barely making it. The comments never stopped. At my nephew's birthday party 6 months ago, Derek made a joke about how I probably couldn't afford to get him a nice present. At Christmas, he offered to help me out with gas money to drive to my parents' house. At Easter dinner, he suggested I should consider getting a real job as a backup plan. Every single time, I just smiled and changed the subject. My sister would give him looks, my parents would get uncomfortable, but I never said anything. Why? Because I was waiting for the perfect moment. And last night, that moment finally came. So here's how it all went down. My sister Sarah calls me up Tuesday afternoon and says, "Hey Mike, I want to take the whole family out for dinner this Saturday. Derek just got promoted to senior account manager, and we want to celebrate." Now, Derek's promotion was probably worth maybe a $5,000 raise, but the way Sarah was talking, you'd think he just became CEO. She suggests this upscale Italian restaurant downtown called Marcello's. Nice place, but not crazy expensive. Entrees run about $30 to $40, which is reasonable for a special occasion. She invites everyone, my parents, Derek's parents, my other sister Lisa and her husband Tom, plus their 2 kids, and my younger brother Jake who's still in college. 12 people total. Sarah insists it's her treat since they're celebrating Derek's promotion, but I can already sense what's coming. Saturday rolls around, and I decide to dress nicely but not over the top. Nice button-down shirt, clean slacks, dress shoes. Nothing flashy, but definitely not shabby. I even get a fresh haircut that morning. I look good, professional, put together. I arrive at Marcello's right on time at 7 p.m. The place is busy, typical Saturday night crowd. The hostess leads me to our reserved table in the back corner, a big round table that can accommodate everyone comfortably. I'm the second person there, right after my parents. My dad gives me a hug and asks how business is going. I give him my usual answer, can't complain, staying busy. He nods and doesn't push for details. My parents have learned over the years that I'm pretty private about work stuff. Then Derek and Sarah arrive, and oh my god, Derek is dressed like he's going to the Met Gala. 3-piece suit, gold watch, Italian leather shoes, the works. He's got his chest puffed out, big smile on his face, acting like he owns the place. Sarah looks beautiful but a little embarrassed by how overdressed Derek is for a family dinner. Derek makes this grand entrance, shaking hands with my dad like he's running for office, giving my mom air kisses like some European aristocrat. Then he gets to me, and I swear I see his eyes skin me up and down, taking in my modest outfit with this little smirk. "Mike. Good to see you, buddy," he says, but there's something in his tone. Like he's already sizing me up, already preparing his material for the evening. The rest of the family trickles in over the next 15 minutes. Derek's parents are nice people, though they've clearly been influenced by Derek's version of events over the years. They're polite to me but not particularly warm. My sister Lisa and her husband Tom are great, they've always been supportive of my business, even when I was struggling. Jake, my younger brother, is in his senior year of college studying computer science. He's always looked up to me, especially since I took the entrepreneurial path. Derek has made several comments over the years about how Jake should get a stable job after graduation instead of following in my footsteps. Once everyone's seated, Derek immediately takes control of the conversation. He's telling everyone about his promotion, how the company recognized his exceptional sales numbers, how he's now managing a team of junior salespeople. The way he's talking, you'd think he just became vice president of the company. My parents are being polite, asking the right questions, showing interest. Derek's parents are beaming with pride. Sarah is smiling, but I can tell she's a little uncomfortable with how much Derek is dominating the conversation. Then Derek starts talking about their plans. Now that I'm making senior money, he says, Sarah and I are looking at houses. Real houses, not apartments. We're thinking about that new development in Westfield, you know, the one with the golf course views. I know exactly which development he's talking about. Houses start at around $400,000, which is nice but not exactly millionaire territory. Still, Derek's talking about it like he's buying a mansion in Beverly Hills. Of course, Derek continues, looking around the table, not everyone can afford to live in places like that. But that's what happens when you focus on building a real career instead of chasing pipe dreams. And that's when I know it's going to be one of those nights. Derek's in full performance mode, and I'm about to become his favorite target. The waiter approaches our table, a young guy, maybe mid-20s, clearly experienced. He's got this professional demeanor but friendly smile. Perfect timing, because Derek immediately sees an opportunity to show off. Good evening, folks, the waiter says. Can I start you off with some drinks tonight? Derek doesn't even let anyone else speak. Yes, I think we'll need a couple bottles of wine for the table. What do you recommend in the, let's say 100 to 150 range? Now, I've been to Marcello's before. Their wine list is decent but not spectacular. A $150 bottle here is probably worth about $60 at the store. But Derek's not buying wine, he's buying an audience. The waiter rattles off a few options, and Derek makes a big show of deliberating, asking about the vintage, the region, acting like he's some kind of sommelier. Finally, he settles on a $120 Barolo. Excellent choice, sir, the waiter says. How many glasses will you need? Derek looks around the table, counting. Let's see, we'll need. Then his eyes land on me, and I see that familiar smirk. Actually, better make that 11 glasses. Not everyone drinks wine. He says it like he's being considerate, but the implication is clear. Mike can't afford to develop expensive tastes. The waiter looks confused for a second, then looks at me. Sir, would you prefer something else? We have an excellent beer selection, or perhaps a cocktail. Before I can answer, Derek jumps in. Just bring him a water for now. Trust me, he's fine with that. The entire table goes quiet for a moment. My sister Sarah looks mortified. My parents exchange glances. Even Derek's parents look a little uncomfortable. I just smile at the waiter and say, water's perfect, thank you. But Derek's not done. As the waiter walks away, Derek leans back in his chair with a satisfied grin. You know, Mike, there's nothing wrong with knowing your limits. Financial responsibility is important. And that's when I realize this isn't going to be subtle little digs all evening. Derek is planning to use this dinner as his personal roast of Mike show. He's feeling confident because of his promotion, he's got his whole family as an audience, and he thinks he's finally found the perfect opportunity to put me in my place once and for all. Little does he know, he's about to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. So the wine arrives, and Derek makes this whole production out of tasting it. The waiter pours him a small amount, Derek swirls it around, sniffs it dramatically, takes this tiny sip, and then nods approvingly like he's judging an international wine competition. Beautiful, he announces. This is why you invest in quality. As the waiter pours wine for everyone else, Derek launches into this monologue about how important it is to appreciate the finer things in life. When you work hard and achieve success, he says, making sure his voice carries to nearby tables, you earn the right to enjoy premium experiences. I'm sitting there sipping my water, and I can feel everyone's eyes on me. My nephew Tommy, who's about 8 years old, innocently asks his mom why Uncle Mike doesn't have wine. Before Lisa can answer, Derek swoops in. Well buddy, Derek says, ruffling Tommy's hair, Uncle Mike is being smart with his money tonight. Not everyone can afford $100 wine, and that's okay. The condescension in his voice is so thick you could cut it with a knife. My sister Sarah kicks Derek under the table, I can see her leg move, but he just keeps going. In fact, Derek continues, clearly warming up, your Uncle Mike is a great example of why it's important to stay in school and work hard. Running your own business sounds exciting, but it's not very stable, is it, Mike? All eyes turn to me. This is the moment where I could defend myself, where I could hint at how well things are actually going. But I don't. I just smile and say, every path has its challenges. Derek nods sagely, like I just confirmed his point. Exactly. That's why I always tell young people to focus on building a solid career first. Benefits, steady paycheck, growth opportunities. You can't put entrepreneurial dreams in the bank. My brother Jake looks uncomfortable. He's been planning to start his own tech company after graduation, and Derek knows this. This whole lecture isn't just aimed at me, it's Derek's way of influencing Jake to abandon his entrepreneurial ambitions. Of course, Derek adds, taking another sip of his expensive wine, there's nothing wrong with small business ownership. Local restaurants, little shops, consulting services, they serve an important purpose in the economy. But let's be realistic about the limitations. The way he says, consulting services, makes it sound like I'm running a lemonade stand. I can see my parents getting more and more frustrated, but they're trying to keep the peace for Sarah's sake. Then the appetizer menus arrive, and Derek sees another opportunity. He starts ordering for the table without asking anyone what they want. We'll do the antipasto platter, the calamari, maybe some bruschetta, oh, and definitely the burrata. You can't come to an Italian restaurant and not get the burrata. The waiter is scribbling down this massive order, and I can see him calculating the bill in his head. We're talking about $60, $70 worth of appetizers for 12 people. Derek notices my expression and misinterprets it completely. Don't worry, Mike, he says loudly enough for half the restaurant to hear. This one's on me. Family celebration, right? Can't have anyone going hungry. He says it like he's doing me this huge favor, like I'm some charity case who can't afford dinner. The worst part is how pleased he looks with himself, like he's being this generous benefactor. My sister Sarah finally speaks up. Derek, maybe we should let everyone order what they want. But Derek waves her off. Nonsense. It's my promotion dinner. I'm feeling generous tonight. The appetizers arrive about 15 minutes later, and Derek continues his performance. He's explaining each dish like he's hosting a cooking show, talking about the quality of the ingredients, making recommendations about which wine pairs with which appetizer. This burrata, he says, spreading it on a piece of bread, is probably made fresh today. You can tell by the texture. When you eat at quality establishments regularly, you develop a palate for these things. I'm watching this whole show, and I'm actually starting to feel bad for Derek. The guy is trying so hard to impress everyone, to establish his superiority, that he's completely oblivious to how obnoxious he's being. Even his own parents look a little embarrassed by his behavior. But then Derek takes it up another notch. As we're finishing the appetizers, he starts talking about financial advice. You know, Mike, he says, leaning forward like he's about to share some profound wisdom, I've been thinking about your situation, and I might be able to help you out. Here it comes. I can see the setup from a mile away. My company is always looking for reliable vendors for smaller projects. Nothing huge, you understand, but steady work. Maybe some basic website updates, simple marketing materials. The pay isn't spectacular, but it's consistent. Might be just what you need to get back on your feet. The entire table goes silent. Derek is literally offering me scraps from his company's table, in front of our entire family, like he's doing me this massive favor. The condescension is so thick it's suffocating. My dad looks like he wants to say something, but I catch his eye and shake my head slightly. I'm not ready to play my hand yet. That's very thoughtful of you, Derek, I say calmly. I'll definitely keep that in mind. Derek beams like he just solved world hunger. That's what family is for, right? We look out for each other. Then the real menus arrive for the main course, and this is where Derek really goes for the jugular. He starts reading through the menu out loud, commenting on the prices. Oh wow, the osso buco is $48. That looks incredible. Then he glances at me. Of course, not everyone needs to go crazy tonight. They've got some nice pasta dishes in the $20 range. He's literally steering me toward the cheapest items on the menu, in front of everyone, like I'm his financially struggling cousin who needs budget guidance. The waiter comes back to take our dinner orders, and Derek immediately jumps in. I think we'll start with the ladies, he says gallantly. The women order their entrees, nothing too expensive, but nice dishes in the $30 to $40 range. Then it's the men's turn. Derek's dad orders the $42 ribeye. My dad gets the salmon for $36. Tom orders the lamb for $45. Jake, my younger brother, orders the pasta special for $28, which is actually what he wants, not because of the price. But Derek nods approvingly. Smart choice, Jake. No point in overspending when you're still in college. Then Derek orders for himself. I'll have the lobster special, he announces. The one with the twin tails. This is the most expensive item on the menu at $68. The waiter turns to me, and I can feel everyone's eyes on me again. This is Derek's big moment. He's ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, he's been making comments about my finances all night, and now everyone's waiting to see if I'll take his advice and order something cheap. I'll have the Wagyu beef, I say calmly. You could hear a pin drop. The Wagyu is $72, $4 more than Derek's lobster. It's the second most expensive item on the entire menu. Derek's smile falters for just a second, but he recovers quickly. Oh, well, that's a great choice, Mike. Really? You deserve to treat yourself once in a while. But I can see the wheels turning in his head. He's trying to figure out how I can afford a $72 steak when I supposedly can't afford wine or appetizers. The waiter finishes taking orders and heads to the kitchen. Derek tries to regain control of the conversation, but there's a weird tension now. He's clearly thrown off by my menu choice. So Mike, Derek says, trying to sound casual, business must be picking up if you're going for the Wagyu. Everyone's looking at me again. This is another perfect opportunity to reveal what's really going on, to put Derek in his place. But I'm still not ready. Like I said, every path has its ups and downs, I reply with a shrug. Derek nods, but I can tell he's not satisfied with that answer. He spent the entire evening painting me as financially struggling, and my menu choice doesn't fit that narrative. Well, Derek says, his voice taking on a slightly sharper edge, I hope you're not putting this on credit cards or anything. That Wagyu is going to be what, $80 with tax and tip? That's a lot to spend on one meal when you're trying to build a business. And there it is. Derek's mask is starting to slip. He's not being generous or helpful anymore. He's being petty and jealous because I had the audacity to order something more expensive than his meal. My sister Sarah looks mortified. Derek, please, she says quietly. But Derek's on a roll now. The wine has loosened his tongue, and his insecurity is showing. I'm just saying, Sarah, financial responsibility is important. When you're not making steady income, you have to be careful about where every dollar goes. He's talking to Sarah, but he's clearly directing this at me. The implication is obvious, I'm being financially irresponsible by ordering an expensive meal when I can't afford it. My mom finally speaks up. Derek, I think Mike can handle his own finances. Derek holds up his hands in mock surrender. Of course, of course. I'm not trying to tell anyone what to do. I'm just speaking from experience. When you're in sales, you learn to read financial situations, you know. It's part of the job. Now he's claiming he can assess my financial situation like he's some kind of expert. The arrogance is breathtaking. In fact, Derek continues, clearly unable to stop himself now. I can usually tell within the first few minutes of meeting someone whether they're financially stable or not. It's all about the tells. How they dress, what they order, how they talk about money. He's literally psychoanalyzing me in front of our entire family, using his amateur psychology to justify his assumptions about my financial situation. Derek, my dad says, his voice carrying a warning tone. But Derek either doesn't hear it or doesn't care. I mean, look around this table, he says, gesturing broadly. You can see who's comfortable and who's stretching their budget just to be here. He doesn't say my name, but he glances at me when he says it. The message is crystal clear. I'm the one stretching my budget. I'm the one who doesn't belong at this level of restaurant. That's when I realize Derek isn't just being condescending anymore. He's being cruel. This isn't about helping me or giving me advice. This is about publicly humiliating me to make himself feel superior. And that's when I decide it's time to end this charade once and for all. Our entrees arrive just as Derek finishes his little lecture about reading people's financial situations. The food looks incredible. My wagyu is perfectly cooked. Derek's lobster tails are massive and beautiful. Everything looks restaurant quality. But I'm not thinking about the food anymore. I'm thinking about the stack of cash in my wallet, and I'm thinking about the lesson Derek is about to learn. The waiter sets down my plate, and I take a bite of the wagyu. It's absolutely delicious, probably the best steak I've had in months. But all I can think about is how Derek's smug expression is about to change forever. Excuse me, I say, standing up from the table. I'll be right back. Derek barely looks up from his lobster. He's probably thinking I'm going to the bathroom, or maybe stepping outside to make a phone call I can't afford to make in front of everyone. But I'm not going to the bathroom. I'm walking straight to the host station, where our waiter is inputting orders into the computer system. It's time to show Derek what real financial stability looks like. I walk up to the host station where our waiter is standing with another server, both of them busy with their tasks. The main dining room is bustling with Saturday night energy, couples on dates, families celebrating, groups of friends enjoying expensive wine and good food. Excuse me, I say to our waiter, whose name tag reads Marcus. Marcus looks up from his computer terminal. Yes sir, is everything okay with your meal? Everything's perfect, I tell him. But I need to speak with you privately for a moment. Marcus nods and steps away from the host station, leading me to a quiet corner near the wine storage area. He's probably thinking I have a complaint about the service or want to modify my order. What can I help you with, sir? I pull out my wallet. Now, I should explain something about my wallet. It's not some fancy designer thing, just a simple brown leather bifold I've had for years. But what's inside it would probably shock most people. See, when you run a cash-intensive business like mine, you develop certain habits. I have clients who prefer to pay in cash, especially for smaller projects. I also have vendors who give discounts for cash payments. Over the years, I've gotten into the habit of keeping a significant amount of cash on hand for business expenses, emergency situations, and opportunities that require immediate payment. Most people keep maybe $40 or $60 in cash in their wallets. I keep thousands. Not because I'm showing off, but because cash gives you power and flexibility in business situations. And tonight, it's going to give me the power to teach Derek the lesson of his lifetime. I open my wallet and Marcus's eyes immediately widen. He's looking at a thick stack of $100 bills, more cash than most people see outside of a bank. I'd like to pay for my entire table's meal tonight, I tell him quietly. Everything. Appetizers, entrees, wine, desserts if anyone orders them, tax, tip, everything. Marcus stares at the cash for a moment, clearly surprised. Sir, are you sure? That's going to be a substantial amount. We have 12 people at your table, plus the wine, the appetizers. I'm absolutely sure, I say. What's the damage going to be? Marcus pulls out his server pad and starts calculating. Well, let's see. The wine was $120, the appetizers were about $75 total, the entrees are ranging from $28 to $72 each. He's scribbling numbers, adding things up. With tax, you're looking at probably around $1,200. Plus tip, if you want to add that. $1,200. That's more than Derek makes in a week, and I'm about to pay it like it's nothing. Add 20% tip, I tell Marcus. Make it $1,500 total. I start counting out hundreds. 5, 10, 15 bills. Marcus is watching me count out more cash than he probably makes in a month, and his expression goes from surprise to amazement. Sir, this is incredibly generous, Marcus says. Are you celebrating something special tonight? I smile. You could say that. I'm celebrating a learning experience. Marcus carefully takes the cash and counts it himself to make sure. $1,500 exactly. Sir, I have to ask, would you like me to bring the check to the table first, or? No, I say firmly. I want you to handle this as quietly as possible. Don't bring a check to the table at all. When the meal is over and people start asking about the bill, that's when you tell them it's been taken care of. Marcus nods, understanding the plan. Got it. Should I mention who paid, or? Let them ask, I say. Just tell them the gentleman at the table took care of everything. Marcus grins. He's clearly been in the service industry long enough to recognize family drama when he sees it. This is going to be interesting. I shake his hand and head back to the table. The walk back feels different somehow. I'm carrying myself differently, feeling more confident. In about 30 minutes, Derek's entire worldview is going to get turned upside down. When I sit back down, Derek glances up from his lobster. Everything okay? Perfect, I say, cutting into my wagyu. Don't get me wrong, Derek adds, there's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur. Someone has to start the small businesses, provide the niche services. It's important work. But let's be honest about the trade-offs. You sacrifice security for independence. You give up the safety net for the dream of maybe, possibly, potentially building something big. Sarah kicks him under the table again, harder this time. Derek, enough. But Derek is in full lecture mode now, probably feeling emboldened by the wine and his own perceived generosity. I'm just saying, there comes a point where you have to evaluate whether the dream is worth the struggle. Look at tonight, for example. I can afford to bring 12 people to a nice restaurant and not think twice about the bill. That's what financial stability gives you, the ability to be generous, to take care of your family, to live without constantly worrying about money. He sits back in his chair with a satisfied expression, like he's just delivered the definitive argument for why his life choices are superior to mine. The table goes quiet. Everyone is uncomfortable. Even the kids can sense the tension. That's when Marcus, our waiter, approaches the table. Perfect timing. Excuse me, folks, Marcus says with a professional smile. I hope everyone enjoyed their meal tonight. Derek immediately perks up, ready for his big moment. Everything was fantastic, he says loudly. Absolutely fantastic. I'll take the check whenever you're ready. Marcus looks around the table, his eyes meeting mine for just a split second. I give him the slightest nod. Actually, sir, Marcus says to Derek, the check has already been taken care of. Derek's smile freezes. I'm sorry, what? The entire meal has been paid for, Marcus explains. Everything, appetizers, entrees, wine, dessert, tax, and gratuity. One of the gentlemen at your table took care of it all. You could hear a pin drop in that restaurant. Derek's face goes through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and then a dawning realization that his entire evening of financial superiority has just crumbled. Who? Derek starts, then stops. He looks around the table, his eyes scanning each face. My dad shakes his head. Tom shrugs. Jake holds up his hands to show he's broke. Then Derek's eyes land on me, and I see the exact moment when the possibility hits him. His face goes pale. Mike. Derek says, his voice barely above a whisper. I smile calmly and nod to Marcus. Thank you for the excellent service tonight. Marcus beams. Thank you, sir. The meal came to $1,250. With the 20% gratuity you added, the total was $1,500 exactly. $1,500. Derek's jaw literally drops open. Sarah gasps. My parents look shocked but proud. Even Derek's parents are staring at me with new expressions. You. Derek stammers. You paid for all of this. All of it, I confirm. Drinks, appetizers, entrees, desserts, tax, tip. Everything. The silence that follows is deafening. Derek is staring at me like I've just performed a magic trick he can't figure out. Marcus continues with perfect timing. Sir, if you don't mind me saying, that was one of the most generous tips we've seen all month. $300 on top of a $1,250 meal. The entire staff appreciates your generosity. $300 in tip alone. That's more than Derek probably spends on groceries in a month, and I just handed it out like it was nothing. Derek's mouth is opening and closing like a fish out of water. He literally cannot process what just happened. His entire evening of establishing financial dominance has been obliterated in 30 seconds. But, how? Derek finally manages to say. I mean, that's $1,500. In cash. You had that much cash on you. I shrug casually. I always carry cash for business expenses. Old habit. Sarah is the first family member to speak. Mike, that was incredibly generous, but you didn't have to do that. We were going to cover it. I know, I say. I wanted to. Derek is still processing. $1,500, he repeats, like he's trying to make the number make sense. You paid $1,500 for dinner. Like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing, I correct him. It was a family celebration. Derek got promoted, remember? That seemed worth celebrating properly. The irony isn't lost on anyone. Derek spent the entire evening positioning himself as the financially successful one, the generous benefactor who could afford to treat the family. And now I've just outspent him by a factor of 10 without even blinking. My dad finally speaks up. Son, that was very generous of you. Are you sure you can afford? Dad, I interrupt gently, I'm fine. Really? But Derek isn't ready to let this go. His entire worldview has been shattered, and he's grasping for explanations that make sense. Wait a minute, Derek says, his voice getting sharper. You're telling me that you, running a small consulting business, just happen to have $1,500 in cash. Just sitting in your wallet. That's right, I say calmly. But that doesn't make sense, Derek insists. Small business owners don't just carry that kind of cash around. Especially struggling ones. And there it is. Derek just called me a struggling small business owner, right after I paid for everyone's dinner. The cognitive dissonance is so strong he can't reconcile what just happened with his assumptions about my financial situation. Lisa jumps to my defense. Derek, maybe your assumptions about Mike's business were wrong. Derek turns to Lisa, his face flushed. Lisa, I work in sales. I know how to read financial situations. Small consultants don't make that kind of money. It's mathematically impossible. Apparently not, Tom says dryly. Derek is getting agitated now. No, there's something else going on here. Maybe Mike borrowed the money, or maybe he's maxed out credit cards, or maybe. Derek. My voice cuts through his speculation, firm but not angry. Stop. The table goes quiet again. Derek looks at me, and for the first time all evening, I see genuine uncertainty in his eyes. You want to know how I can afford to spend $1,500 on dinner without thinking twice about it? I ask. Derek nods, still looking confused and slightly panicked. Because my business isn't struggling, Derek. It hasn't been struggling for 2 years. I didn't want to make a big deal about it because that's not who I am, but since you've spent the entire evening making assumptions about my finances, maybe it's time you knew the truth. I pause, letting that sink in. My digital marketing consultancy currently has 17 active clients, including 3 Fortune 500 companies. Last month, I billed over $60,000 in services. This year, I'm on track to clear $400,000 in revenue, with about a 70% profit margin. Derek's face goes from flush to pale in about 3 seconds. I drive an old Honda not because I can't afford a BMW, but because I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I live in a modest apartment not because I'm broke, but because I'm saving money to buy a house with cash. I dress simply not because I shop at discount stores, but because expensive clothes don't make me better at my job. The entire table is staring at me now. Even the kids have stopped talking and are listening. And I carry cash, Derek, because when you're making the kind of money I'm making, cash gives you options. It gives you the power to handle unexpected situations, to take advantage of opportunities, and apparently, to shut down condescending family members who think they know everything about everyone else's financial situation. Derek looks like he might be sick. $400,000, he whispers. Gross revenue, I clarify. Net profit is about $280,000 annually. After taxes, I take home roughly what you make in 4 years, Derek. Every single year. Sarah's jaw has dropped. My parents look stunned but proud. Jake is grinning like he just watched his hero win the World Series. Derek's parents, Bob and Linda, are looking at Derek like they don't recognize him. All evening, they've been listening to Derek put me down, make jokes about my financial situation, treat me like the family failure. Now they're realizing that their son has been systematically humiliating someone who makes more money than Derek could dream of. But Derek starts, then stops. But you never said anything. You never acted like. I mean, you drive that old car, and you dress so normal, and you never talk about money. Because that's what actual financial security looks like, Derek, I explain patiently. When you have real money, you don't need to constantly talk about it, wear it, or use it to make other people feel small. You just live your life. Derek slumps back in his chair like he's been deflated. I don't understand. Why didn't you ever correct me? All those times I made comments about your business, about your finances, why didn't you just tell me? I take a sip of my water before answering. Because I was hoping you'd figure out on your own that making assumptions about people is a mistake. I was hoping you'd realize that success comes in many different forms, and that putting other people down doesn't make you more successful. But mostly, I continue, I was waiting for you to go too far. And tonight, Derek, you went way too far. The restaurant around us has gotten quieter, and I realize that other diners have been listening to our conversation. The drama at our table has become dinner theater for half the restaurant. Marcus returns with a small leather folder. Sir, here's your receipt for your records. I take the receipt without looking at it and slip it into my wallet. $1,500, documented proof of what just happened. Derek stares at the receipt like it's a death certificate. I can't believe this, he mutters. I can't believe I've been so wrong about everything. The conversation continues around the table. Derek has moved on from financial advice and is now telling everyone about his company's new office space. Corner windows, granite countertops in the break room, even a coffee bar with one of those fancy espresso machines. Jake seems interested in Derek's stories, but I can tell he's also uncomfortable with how Derek keeps taking shots at entrepreneurship. My parents are being polite but distant. Sarah is trying to keep the conversation moving, probably hoping Derek will run out of material soon. Derek's parents, Bob and Linda, are nice people, but they've clearly bought into Derek's version of reality. They keep praising Derek's practical approach to career building and making subtle digs about risky business ventures. The thing about sales, Derek continues, is that it teaches you to read people. Body language, verbal cues, economic indicators. You learn to identify who's got real money and who's just pretending. He's back to his amateur psychology routine, and once again, I can feel him glancing in my direction when he talks about people pretending to have money. Tom, my brother-in-law who's married to Lisa, finally speaks up. Derek, don't you think success comes in different forms? I mean, Mike's been running his own business for years. That takes a lot of courage. Derek nods condescendingly. Oh, absolutely, Tom. Courage, determination, all of that. But courage doesn't pay the bills, you know. At some point, you have to be realistic about results. And there it is again. Derek's subtle way of saying that my business isn't successful, that I'm not making real money, that I'm living in some kind of fantasy land. Lisa jumps in to defend me. Mike's business has grown a lot over the years. He's got some really impressive clients. Derek's smile becomes more forced. I'm sure he does, Lisa. I'm not questioning Mike's work ethic or his clients. I'm just saying there's a difference between having clients and having profitable clients. Revenue versus profit, you know. Now he's implying that even if I have clients, I'm not making money from them. The guy is relentless. In my experience, Derek continues, small consultants often end up working for very low margins. They get the clients, but they're essentially buying themselves a job, not building real wealth. My mom looks like she wants to throw her wine glass at Derek's head. My dad is gripping his fork so tightly his knuckles are white. Even Derek's parents are starting to look uncomfortable with how aggressively he's going after me. But I remain calm. Because in about 15 minutes, Derek is going to eat every single word he said tonight. The conversation moves to other topics as we finish our entrees. Derek talks about their house hunting, their vacation plans, his ideas for investing his promotion bonus. Everything he says is designed to reinforce his image as the successful, financially stable family member. When the waiter asks about dessert, Derek immediately takes charge again. I think we should definitely do dessert. It's a celebration, right? He orders the tiramisu, the chocolate cake, and some kind of fancy gelato sampler for the table to share. More money on the bill. More evidence of Derek's generosity and financial stability. As we're eating dessert, Derek launches into what I can only describe as his closing argument. You know what I love about nights like this, he says, gesturing around the table. Being able to bring the family together, treat everyone to a nice meal, not worry about the cost. He pauses dramatically, clearly building up to something. When I was younger, Derek continues, I used to think that being your own boss was the ultimate goal. Freedom, independence, all of that. But you know what I learned? Real freedom comes from financial security. Steady income, good benefits, the ability to take care of your family without worrying about where the next paycheck is coming from. He's looking directly at me now, no longer being subtle about his target. The aftermath of my revelation is unlike anything I could have imagined. Derek sits in stunned silence, staring at his empty plate like it holds the answers to all of life's mysteries. The confident, condescending man who walked into this restaurant 3 hours ago has completely disappeared. Sarah is the first to break the silence. Mike, I had no idea your business was doing so well. Why didn't you ever mention it? Before I can answer, Derek suddenly straightens up in his chair. Wait, he says, his voice taking on a desperate edge. Wait just a minute. You said Fortune 500 companies. Which ones? I mean, anyone can claim to have big clients. Even now, even after I just paid for a $1,500 dinner in cash, Derek is still trying to poke holes in my story. The cognitive dissonance is so strong that he's grasping at any possible explanation that doesn't require him to completely revise his worldview. I pull out my phone and open my email app. Derek, do you really want me to show you invoices? Client contracts? Bank statements? No, I just... Derek trails off, realizing how desperate he sounds. My brother Jake leans forward, clearly excited. Mike, this is incredible. You're making more money than I thought was possible. How did you scale up so quickly? This is the conversation I've been wanting to have with Jake for months, but Derek's constant negativity made it impossible. It wasn't quick, Jake. It took 3 years of 18-hour days, learning from mistakes, and slowly building relationships. But once you prove you can deliver results for big companies, word spreads fast. Derek is listening to this conversation with growing horror. Not only is his worldview crumbling, but he's realizing that his constant discouragement might have actually hindered Jake's entrepreneurial ambitions. The key, I continue, speaking to Jake but aware that everyone is listening, is focusing on results rather than recognition. I spent 2 years building systems, processes, and case studies. When I finally started approaching Fortune 500 companies, I had proof of what I could deliver. My dad asks the question I've been waiting for. Son, if you're doing so well, why keep it quiet? Why let people think you're struggling? I look around the table, my eyes settling on Derek for a moment. Because I learned a long time ago that money changes how people treat you. Some people become resentful, others become fake friendly because they want something. I wanted my family relationships to be based on who I am, not what I make. Plus, I add, I was raised to believe that bragging about money is tacky. Success should speak for itself. Derek flinches at that last comment, probably thinking about his entire evening of financial peacocking. Sarah looks conflicted. Mike, I feel terrible. All those times Derek made comments, I should have said something stronger. I just thought. We thought. You thought I was struggling, I finished for her. And that's okay, Sarah. I let you think that because it was easier than dealing with the complications that come with people knowing you have money. Derek suddenly slams his hand on the table, causing several glasses to jump. This is insane, he says loudly enough that nearby tables turn to look. You're telling me that for 3 years, you've been sitting there listening to me give you financial advice while you were secretly making 10 times more money than me. Derek, lower your voice, Sarah hisses, embarrassed by the attention he's drawing. But Derek is past caring about social conventions. His entire identity has been built on being the financially successful one in the family, and that identity just got obliterated. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? Derek continues, his voice cracking slightly. I've been treating you like you're broke. I offered you charity work for my company. I've been explaining basic financial concepts to someone who makes more in a month than I make in half a year. The desperation in Derek's voice is actually starting to make me feel sorry for him. The guy has built his entire self-worth around financial success, and now he's discovering that his measuring stick was completely wrong. Derek, I say gently, your success isn't diminished by my success. You got promoted, you're doing well in your career, you should be proud of that. But Derek isn't listening. No, you don't understand. Everyone's going to know about this. This whole family is going to know that I've been condescending to someone who's actually way more successful than me. Do you know how humiliating that is? Lisa speaks up. Derek, the only person who's been humiliated tonight is Mike. You've spent 3 hours treating him like he was beneath you financially. Derek turns to Lisa with wild eyes. But he let me do it. He sat there and let me make a fool of myself. I tried to change the subject multiple times, I point out. You kept pushing. Derek's mom, Linda, finally speaks up. Derek, honey, maybe you should apologize to Mike. Derek looks at his mother like she just asked him to perform brain surgery. Apologize? Mom, he's been lying to all of us for years. I never lied, I correct him firmly. I just didn't volunteer information about my income. There's a difference. Derek stands up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need some air, he announces, and walks toward the restaurant's exit. Sarah starts to get up to follow him, but I gesture for her to stay seated. Let him go, Sarah. He needs time to process this. The table sits in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Then my dad starts laughing. Dad? Sarah asks, concerned. I'm sorry, my dad says, wiping tears from his eyes. It's just, son, that was the most expensive way to prove a point I've ever seen. $1,500 to shut up your brother-in-law. The tension breaks, and suddenly everyone is laughing. Even Derek's parents are chuckling, probably relieved that the evening's drama is finally over. It was worth every penny, I say, and I mean it. Jake is still processing everything. Mike, I have so many questions about how you built your business. Can we talk sometime? I mean, really talk about the specifics. Of course, I tell him. I've been wanting to have that conversation for years. Tom raises his water glass. I think a toast is in order. To Mike, for his incredible success, and for handling tonight with more class than Derek deserved. Everyone raises their glasses, water, wine, whatever they have. To Mike. As we're toasting, Derek comes back into the restaurant. He's been outside for about 10 minutes, and he looks calmer but defeated. He sits down heavily and stares at the table. I owe everyone an apology, Derek says quietly. Especially Mike. The table goes quiet again, waiting. Mike, I'm sorry. I've been a complete ass for 3 years. I made assumptions, I was condescending, I was jealous and insecure, and I took it out on you. His voice is barely above a whisper. You didn't deserve any of that. It's the first genuine thing Derek has said all evening. I accept your apology, Derek, I say. But I want you to understand something. The way you treated me tonight. That wasn't about money. That was about respect. You can make different amounts of money and still treat each other with dignity. Derek nods miserably. I know. I know that now. Sarah takes Derek's hand. We all make mistakes, honey. The important thing is learning from them. Derek looks up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Can I ask you something? I nod. Why consulting? I mean, with that kind of talent, you could have gotten a job at any major corporation. You could have been making this kind of money years ago. It's actually a good question, and one that shows Derek is starting to think differently about entrepreneurship. Because I wanted to build something, I explain. Working for someone else, even for good money, means building their dream instead of your own. It took longer to get here, and it was riskier, but now I have something that's completely mine. Derek considers this. And you really think Jake should try starting his own company after graduation? I think Jake should do whatever feels right for him, I say. But yeah, I think he's got the skills and the drive to be successful as an entrepreneur. Jake beams at the endorsement. Derek turns to Jake. Jake, I owe you an apology too. I've been discouraging you from following your dreams because I was too narrow-minded to see that there are different paths to success. Jake, who's matured a lot during this conversation, nods graciously. Thanks, Derek. That means a lot. As we're getting ready to leave, Derek pulls me aside. Mike, I have one more request, he says nervously. What's that? Would you maybe be willing to give me some advice? About business, I mean. Not because I want to quit my job or anything, but because I clearly don't understand as much about success as I thought I did. It's a humble request from someone who spent the evening acting like he had all the answers. Sure, Derek. We can grab coffee sometime and talk. Derek looks relieved. Thank you. And Mike. What you did tonight, paying for everyone's dinner, that was class. Real class. I would have been petty and vindictive, but you found a way to make your point while doing something generous for the family. That's what family does, I say simply. As we walk out of Marcello's, Sarah falls into step beside me. Mike, I'm proud of you, she says. Not for the money, although that's impressive. I'm proud of how you handled Derek tonight. You could have destroyed him completely, but you found a way to teach him a lesson while preserving his dignity. Derek's a good guy underneath all that insecurity, I tell her. He just needed a wake-up call. Well, you certainly gave him one. In the parking lot, everyone is saying their goodbyes. Derek approaches me one more time. Mike, I know I have no right to ask this, but would you mind not telling people the specific details about how much money you make? I mean, I know I deserve whatever humiliation comes my way, but... Derek, I never planned to tell anyone in the first place. That was always going to stay private. Derek looks surprised. Really? Really? Tonight was about teaching you a lesson, not about broadcasting my business to the world. Derek extends his hand for a shake. Thank you. For everything. For the lesson, for your discretion, and for giving me a chance to be better. I shake his hand. Everyone deserves a chance to be better. As I drive home that night, I think about what just happened. $1,500 is a lot of money, even for me. But sometimes the most expensive lessons are the most valuable ones. Derek learned that assumptions can make you look foolish. He learned that success comes in many forms. He learned that treating people with respect is more important than establishing dominance. But maybe the most important thing Derek learned is that real confidence doesn't need to put other people down to build itself up. As for me, I learned that sometimes keeping secrets, even innocent ones, can cause more problems than they solve. My family had a right to know that my business was successful, not because they needed the details of my finances, but because my success was something to be celebrated, not hidden. 3 days later, Derek texted me asking if we could grab coffee. We met at a small cafe near his office, and he spent 2 hours asking genuine questions about entrepreneurship, business development, and what success really means. At the end of our conversation, Derek said something that stuck with me. I realize now that I was so focused on competing with everyone that I forgot to actually support anyone. That coffee meeting turned into monthly conversations. Derek started encouraging his younger co-workers instead of competing with them. He began asking questions instead of making assumptions. He even started volunteering with a local small business development organization. Sarah told me later that Derek had become a completely different person, more confident in a quiet way, more support. And Jake. Jake ended up starting his tech company right after graduation. I invested in it as a silent partner, and Derek became one of Jake's first customers, referring several clients from his company. So that $1,500 dinner at Marcelo's turned out to be one of the best investments I ever made. Not because it made me money, but because it changed relationships, opened conversations, and taught everyone at the table something important about success, respect, and family. The moral of the story? Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the most valuable ones. And sometimes, the best way to prove your point isn't with words, it's with actions that speak louder than anything you could ever say. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to teach someone a lesson about making assumptions? How did you handle it? And remember, real success isn't about putting others down, it's about lifting everyone up while you climb.